think I'm getting a double chin. Oh, do you ever feel insecure? Well, you're not alone. In fact, you'd be a rare animal indeed if you never succumb to any insecurities from time to time. If you go back to your childhood, that's where all these issues stem from. According to Jaemin Frazer, who's been diving deep into this topic for about 8 years now. He's the author of several books, including Unhindered, The 7 Essential Practices for Overcoming Insecurity. He's founder of the Insecurity Project and winner of Australian Enterprise Awards Most Empowering Personal Development Coach in 2023. So I'm very privileged to have Jaemin on this program. There's a lot to unpack. I hope you enjoy this episode. Well, Jaemin, firstly, thank you. Thanks for joining me on Master Your Market. First question, what is the Insecurity Project and how did it start and why?
Sure. So insecurity is a universal issue, but I watch people suffer greatly because they don't know that it's a solvable problem. So the project is to create content and conversation that's intelligent, rational and adult about examining the nature of a universal problem and providing real-world solutions to it so that people can find their way out of. I think not only can you solve insecurity, I think you must. I think it's your most important adult work. So yeah, the project aims to draw attention to that, even though it's a vulnerable subject. It started when as a coach, all roads kept leading to Rome. My desire to be useful and transformational for people, it was always limiting beliefs that got in the way. And the worst of those limiting beliefs were the insecurities, the deep, dark fears about value and worth. So I just thought if I can develop my skill set around understanding how those things have changed, I can be really useful to people. And I kind of got ruined for anything else. And then I told my business coach at the time that I was going to double down on that as a brand, call myself the Insecurity Project. And he said, oh, you can't do that. Like, that's a terrible idea.
Oh, really?
It won't work. He said, well, it can't work because people are insecure about being insecure. So it's too vulnerable. No one's going to put their hand up and say, hi, Jaemin, I'm insecure. Can you help me? And he said it also went against business practice. You're supposed to pitch the prize, not the problem. So I should have been the confidence project or the self-esteem project, not the insecurity project. It's like calling yourself the shit business guy. So he told me all the reasons why it wouldn't work, which was very useful because it challenged me. And I went away and, in a moment of reflection, thought, well, he's not my mum, so he can't really tell me what to do and help me think about the fact that I'm kind of ruined for anything else. And it would feel very unkind not to present a solution to something that clearly has a solution. So I just doubled down on it and prepared for the long game. And that's almost 8 years ago now. So I've been, talking exclusively about insecurity for that time. And I don't think he imagined how committed I was going to be to that cause. And so from a SEO perspective, I kind of own that word now.
Yep.
There's not anyone who's spoken as much about insecurity as I have for the last 8 years. So people kind of find me from all over the globe.
Well, there you go. And there is a prize at the end. I mean, we're all insecure, and we'll talk about this in a minute. But I suppose, we can do things to get better with our insecurity. But before we get into that, how does insecurity affect the way we run our businesses and live our lives?
Well, important to understand that it may in fact be a performance-enhancing drug for a season, and to be entirely pragmatic about insecurity. If you've got something to prove and defend, you've got someone who's told you you'll never do that or you can't do that. Sometimes that can really energize us and create an incredible amount of motivation. Now, the problem is you need to be a young person for that to survive, because you need energy to waste when you're being driven by insecurity. So people do all kinds of amazing things because they're insecure, but at the same time, it's very exhausting and unsustainable. So by the time you get to midlife, using all your best energy to prove yourself and defend yourself cannot be optimal. It can't. And especially when you no longer have energy to waste, If your best energy is designed to prove yourself, defend yourself, protect yourself, cover yourself for what you think people are going to find out about you, that's a lot of wasted energy. So I think ultimately it's just inefficient. That's the worst thing. It's going to create all kinds of inefficiencies to your creativity, your motivation, your clarity, your confidence. And if you're running a small business and it's you that's showing up each day, showing up weakened by insecurity, you could imagine how that's going to cost you.
My oath, yeah. Well, $64,000 question then. How do we get, I don't know, is the term get over our insecurities or deal with our insecurities?
Well, eradicate is the word. Completely eradicate them. That is the aim of the game.
Yeah.
And people are not sure that's true. That's not been their experience. So there are 7 essential practices. That's been my life's work on the subject and the book I've written. And I don't claim to have invented that path. I claim to have discovered that it existed in the world and to make it explicit. So, but let me just give you the first of those 7 just as a way of showing what happens when you start in the right place. And because my experience with people thinking about insecurity is they don't actually know what they're afraid of. And Yoda says, named must your fear be before banish it you can. So people, no one knows. They think they know, and because they think they know, they don't even go looking. But the first job is to step into the light. No one has ever solved the problem without turning and facing it first. So what are you afraid of? And are you sure? And the wonder of just that step is when you get precise, no one's afraid of failure or rejection, which is what they think. It's the personal implications of those things, i.e. if I was to fail, what does that reveal about me? Now it's personal. Now you see I am a failure. Or if I was to be rejected, what does that reveal about me? Now you see that I don't deserve love or that I'm not worthy, I'm not enough. So when you look closely, we think we're afraid of what's out there, but we're actually afraid of what's in here. We're afraid of our own worst opinion of ourselves. And you look even closer still and you realise those opinions were inevitably formed before we were 7. So we are, each of us, most afraid of our own worst childhood opinion of ourselves. We just don't want it confirmed by the world. So for fear of it being confirmed, we run or we hide, prove or defend instead. So to solve it, you would have to go back and examine that opinion and discover whether it's accurate. And your fear is that it is, but if you hear anyone else's version of this, you realise it has no logic. It's an irrational misunderstanding told by a scared child that's gone unscrutinised, developed its own evidence and its own self-fulfilling prophecy.
So how do you do? I mean, I know we could talk about this all day, but just for that one, how do you do that? Sitting on a psychiatrist's couch, or
you think about it. You examine the data. You go back and remap the territory of your childhood. You consider the defining moments. They're all there. You have memories that impacted you. You have experiences that you'd rather not think about, but if you're willing to think about them, it's self-evident that they hurt, they changed you, they shocked you, they surprised you. So if you're willing to go and examine the structure of those things, what you're looking for is the sense-making paradigm that happened in those moments. We are storytellers. We go into the world and we have to make sense of it, primarily with 2 questions. Question 1, why did that happen? Question 2, what does it mean about me? So your insecurity will be formed by the way you answer those questions in surprising, embarrassing, upsetting, disappointing moments of your childhood. How you answered those questions. And so to realise you had the pen the whole time, like you're the one answering those questions. No one can answer them for you. You kind of realise that you created your own fear, and therefore, if you're willing to think about it, you can think differently. You can change your mind. You can review the data and realise there's been a misunderstanding.
You said, I think, and when you're really young, under 7 years old, could there be events also later in life or in your teenage years, for example?
There's always events in teenage years, but when you look at them closely, they're the confirmation of things you've already decided are true earlier. Right. And they went the way they were because you already had a bias toward thinking that way. So, but they're just patterns, they're repetition of what you've already decided is true. No one makes it to 7 without implicating themselves. No one survives their childhood without creating limiting beliefs and forming negative opinions. And then because you think they're right, you just go looking for evidence that they are, and they become the paradigm, the story, the persona, and gather their own evidence. So,
right. So it's a matter of finding that evidence or understanding it, perhaps, and then what? And then sitting down with yourself and telling yourself everything's all right, or...
Well, without oversimplifying the process, it is to go back and examine what you have not examined, and to do it as an adult. So it's to rescue yourself. It's to re-parent yourself. It's to go back and understand that in your forming of your own opinion, you betrayed you. You've been worried about how everyone else betrayed you, but you are the one who decided ultimately that there was a problem with you. And I love Don Miguel Ruiz's wisdom. He says, look, you've got to know it wasn't the words spoken to you or about you that changed your life. It's just the ones you agree with. So that's so incredible, because it just means no one has the power to bless us or curse us without our permission. So we're at the heart of our own drama. And when you see it like that, you realise no one's coming to save you. You formed the first opinion. You wrote the first story. So when you're ready... surely you've got more resources now than you did then, so you could update that story if you're willing, if you're prepared to go back and examine it.
Do you have any example of an incident that, whether it's hypothetical or not, where it's resulted in the insecurities of someone who's an adult?
Oh, so all day, every day, I'm hearing the stories and going back into childhood. So here's a classic one. Yep. A client I was working with feels, like really as a 45-year-old man, very lost in his own decision making, feels powerless to really know what's best for him, does not expect things to work out for himself, so is caught up serving people's vision, getting led by the loudest voice in the room, and that's caused a lot of suffering. So I'm curious, where did that start? Like, when was the first time you believed you didn't deserve to be happy or weren't worthy to make your own decisions? And so he's not sure, no one is, but we start reviewing the data and realise there was a key moment that happened just before his 6th birthday. And he grew up in a cul-de-sac, which is often a really fun place to grow up with if there are other families with kids your age. It becomes a kind of a sporting hub and a place for a lot of games. So there were 9 boys in his street. They all loved BMX riding. And so every afternoon, every spare moment, there was a spare block up behind one of the houses. They built these jumps. They'd ride their BMX bikes and have this great time. And one by one throughout that year, he was the youngest in that group, but every kid on their birthday got an upgraded bike for their birthday. That was what they'd pitched for, and parents kind of got on board with it, and everyone got a new bike that year. And so this kid, being the youngest, had to wait the longest. He pitched it to his parents. He got teased by the kid, I'm the kid with a shit bike, but that's okay because December's coming. It's nearly my birthday. The day finally arrives. He wakes up so excited. It's all going to be okay. I'm going to fit in again. He goes outside, and his parents, they've heard that he wanted a bike, but they put their heads together and they think, let's get him a laptop. We'll spend 3 times the amount of money, but we're going to be parents of the year. We'll set him up for education. This is going to be great. So they're excited. They're giving him a loving gift. He goes out, sees this box, and what the bloody hell's going on here? Unwraps it, and he died. He says he died in that moment. He went, how is this possible? How in the world is this happening to me? This is the end of everything. I will never fit in. And the people who say they love me don't. It's all a game. Clearly, I don't matter. Clearly, I don't matter enough to be happy. And so in a moment where his parents are trying to do the right thing, we've all, it's often you hear parents have done a terrible thing or someone said something horrible. Here we've got an example of someone trying to do something loving, but that boy had to make sense of it. Why is this happening and what does it mean about me? And in his 5-year-old brain, the only logic he could come up with was that was a reflection of his worth, and he was sure about it. So it's moments like that. No one survives. Even perfect parents don't perfect parents don't prevent their child having moments of confusion and surprise like that where they implicate themselves. So everyone's got their story like that. And that's not a tragedy. The tragedy is adults don't know it's their job to go back and review the data and set themselves free from such horrible accusations.
Yeah. Well, kids are very sensitive, yeah, and it's I think they're sensitive. Well, yeah, to loud noises and angry parents and all that sort of stuff does create issues later in life growing up like that. Anyway, that's a good story. And who do you help? Like with your work, the Insecurity Project, is it business owners or is it, who is your market?
They're typically ambitious midlifers, so they're entrepreneurs, they're leaders, they're business owners. I get invited to talk to schools about insecurity, and teachers are really excited and parents are really excited. But you know who's not excited? And school 16, 17, 18-year-olds, they're not excited. They're little shits and they're not ready for wisdom yet, and they don't want to be told what to do. So I love talking to exhausted people. I love talking to people who've got skin in the game. I get invited into the corporate space to talk about it, but I've never got enough leverage in there because it's never the senior leaders. They're always giving me their teams who've not paid a cent for me to be there, who don't want to be talking about insecurity. These are tough subjects, so I only get to talk about it with people who are in pain and have got a direct link between their insecurity and the thing they're trying to do. So most people will never review the data around their childhood. It's just too hard, too scary. They'll keep running and hiding. So
really,
ambitious midlifers are the people who I serve the best, and it's kind of how I built my business around that market.
Right. So it seems like there's a bit of denialism amongst the corporate leaders then.
Oh, yeah, and I think it's a game that often is served by insecurity. Same as politics, it's a game that rewards insecurity. You kind of have to sell your soul to get any influence, and by the time you get the influence, you're so morally corrupt that you're too far gone anyway. And the cost of telling the truth then, it's too late.
Yeah.
You're too deep in that, whereas solo entrepreneurs, they control all the moving parts. It's just them. So they don't have to answer to anyone. They don't have to ask anyone's permission. It's the work they're able to do on their own.
Right. So how do you get the word out then about your services? How do you market yourself?
Well, I've prepared to play the long game, which was an important distinction. So I've largely have a content-based marketing strategy. So I've decided that I will speak intelligently about a single subject repeatedly. So I do my own podcast. I've got over 300 episodes.
Wow.
Just released my 6th book. I go on other people's podcasts. I write blogs. I'm fairly active on the socials, and I stay in my lane. And I'm prepared for the fact that I'm a life coach, and that's a challenging industry to be an expert in because there's no barrier to entry. So anyone can be a coach. So there's a lot of suspicion about the space that I play in, which I used to bemoan. I thought, it's horrible. But it's actually wonderful because it's quite easy to stand out if you're prepared to play the long game. So people follow me for 2 or 3 years before they lean in, and they want to sniff me out and see if I'm full of shit or not. And and it's great because all I've got is my integrity, my willingness to embody my message, which therapists and psychologists are not required to embody anything. They can point to a governing body or a certificate on the wall as to what qualifies them to do their work. I can't. So people are watching me to see if I'm smoking what I'm selling, to see if these ideas are so good, then are they working for me? And so my marketing method is I let people watch me. I share my world. I let them in on how this applies to me. My podcasts are very personal. I share stories that my wife would prefer that I didn't. Sometimes with her permission, sometimes not. But my strategy has been to be me in the world in a visible way, and to demonstrate that not only it's possible, but it's believable that you can solve this problem. And then the organic growth that comes from people who solve it off the back of following a plan. They tell stories. They refer people back my way. So again, it's a long strategy. I don't pay for any marketing at the moment. All of it is organic.
It's a long-term strategy. You consistently rock up. You do your blogs on a consistent basis, and the podcast. Can I just ask? 300 episode. Is that one every week, every fortnight?
Well, it's typically one a week for most of the year. It probably ends up being 35 or 40 episodes a year. Over the last 6 or 7 years. And the game that I play podcasting is I will not add to the noise. So I've told my market that it's likely to expect a weekly rhythm. But if I don't have anything to say, I won't say something for the sake of meeting a weekly expectation. I prefer that they are excited every time they see an episode because they know I feel like I've got something to say. So that's how I've structured it and framed my expectations to the audience.
Right. And is it monologue or is it interview style?
So I do a few different versions. So I'll do interview people who have overcome insecurity. Sometimes I interview past clients. Sometimes I interview people who are doing great things in the world and get a chance for them to tell their story. Sometimes I do coaching demonstrations. So a few clients have allowed me to record a conversation and share that. They're often the most liked and listened to episodes because you can't help but try it on. And it's such a daunting subject to wade into. So to be able to listen to someone else's journey, it's a big gift when someone lets me publish one of those.
Do they obviously know that you're recording them?
Oh, yes, it's all very,
right?
very much. There's a big decision to allow, and but it's a real gift for them to do that, and an effective way for me to share that. And then, but often it's just me monologuing, me sharing some ideas and stories. And I used to do 10-minute Tuesdays, so my game used to be short and sharp, straight to the point, no wheel spinning. No fluff, just here's an idea. I'll say it as succinctly as possible, then I'll stop talking. Over the years and having built up an audience, people afford me a bit more time so I can string things out and, I don't have to be as fast-paced and nervous that I will lose attention if I talk longer. So sometimes I'll string out an hour-long monologue and
Wow.
people enjoy that.
Wow, that's incredible. And the other part of your game is to get yourself on other podcasts. That's important.
It is important. And when I look at the most effective marketing strategies across the years of business, I can point to there are still podcast episodes recorded 3 or 4 years ago that are evergreen, that people find that would never have found me from my platforms, but find me through other people's platforms, and they come to me. So that's definitely a big strategy. Although I went a bit too hard down that strategy for a while and realised it's not just any podcast. You have to be a bit strategic. I don't even remember the platform, but there was kind of like this Tinder for podcasters that I got involved in for a while, and the next thing everyone's got a podcast and everyone wants guests. And I was getting up at all times of the night to get on these podcasts around the world thinking this is really effective. And then I realised no one's listening to these episodes.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, so much better to be strategic about the ones that I put myself forward for.
Absolutely. You live and learn. Well, we've covered a lot, Jaemin. Thank you so much for your time. But before we go, I suppose, can I ask if you have any inspiration or words of advice for those in business, either with their insecurities or with running their business?
Sure. Well, the latest book that I wrote is called The Self-Permission Method, How to Succeed in Life Without Using Self-Discipline. It's a very counterintuitive approach to success, but I think a really beautiful one. And it kind of flies in the face of some of the David Goggins, ex-military hard ass where you just try harder. Yeah. So I think, people on your audience who are thinking about starting their own podcast and putting themselves out there, my question would be, do you have permission to speak up, to stand out, to scale up? That might be a strange question, but if you have a bunch of unresolved insecurity, there might be a big part of you resisting what you think you want because it's just not safe. you're going to increase the scrutiny, increase the judgment, increase the eyes on you, which increases the chance you're going to be found out. So if you actually want to stand out and speak up, you're going to have to deal with some insecurity. Otherwise, the best part of you will keep putting the handbrake on, keep sabotaging your growth, giving you all kinds of reasons why you never actually get to the time of starting this podcast. So I would say it becomes essential to solve these problems if you want to be the person you know you can be in the world.
That's great. Great advice. And before we go, people who want to get in contact with you, what do they do?
Look, if you can work out how to spell my name, my parents gave me the gift of a unique name. So if you can spell it, you can find me. I'm anywhere. And you Google insecurity, then you'll eventually find your way back as well. So it shouldn't be that hard.
Fantastic. And we'll put the details in the show notes. Jaemin, thank you so much for your time. Really enjoyed it, and wish you all the best.
Good on you, Chris. Thank you.